child's development. You got to have a lot of trust there. So that's when to get help. Sometimes folk will, especially if they hear, and this would be some of the more challenging cases I've had, where the kid will express suicidal ideation. They say, oh, well, they're just want attention. Yeah, they do, and they need it. That's one of the main things. So that would be the time to go ahead and get help as well. Okay, and I have a list of either anxiety, depression, and different ways kids express suicidal thoughts. And some of them aren't directed, because very rarely will kids, I'd say elementary to early high school, will say, I want to kill myself. Because they're usually not thinking in that way. Every once in a while they will, but they may say it in jest. But some of the other times they'll talk about, I wish I weren't here anymore, or I wish things were the way they used to be, and especially if they're talking in almost a fantasy way. So. I'll close this portion of it now, and I'd like to go with some questions if y'all have. If not, I can continue to keep going, but I don't want to miss out on any questions.
Could you just clarify? You mentioned emo. Some parents don't know what that is.
Okay. Emo is short for emotional. Okay. And there's certain types of emotional music. I don't know. Maybe any of my students, do y'all know any groups? Emo groups? No? Okay, just checking. Every once in a while, some students know more than I do about the latest group. But if you Google emo and look it up on the internet, or sometimes even ask some of your kids, because sometimes there's a perception that a kid is emo, based on the way they dress, or they might even write it on the side of their shoes. I mean, at first I thought it had to do something with an Elmo. And some didn't know how to spell. Because sometimes they put it on their back, because I've seen all kinds of different backpacks. I think a few years ago, there's this deal where cartoon backpacks became big in high school again. And kids would wear like big cartoon shirts and other, so I thought it had to do with Elmo and other things, but no, it's a particular group of kids usually. By middle or high school, they start hanging out together. Some of the other challenges usually have to do with, and I'm always concerned when they start sharing information about self-harm, specifically either cutting themselves, or some kids will take erasers and make eraser tattoos, or sometimes they'll burn themselves. And usually kids who, and now I'm bringing them up, usually kids who are doing self-harm, most of them aren't expressing suicidal ideation. Most of them, it kind of shocks them too, that they feel a sense of relief. Because what their body has done is become numb to whatever emotional pain they had, and cutting allows them to actually feel like they're alive, because they almost feel like they're in a dream state because they're so depressed or in such a great deal of pain. Now the emo culture with the music, it just adds and heightens the sensation. Some kids just get into it because their friend was into it, okay, and they try it out. And they realize, man, this is sad, dark stuff. And some kids it will be a phase. But for too many of the kids who are involved with that, it's more than a phase, and it's an expression of who they are, but they also kind of close people out. That's my bigger concern with it, that they close some people out. Yes?
If you find out or you notice that your child is listening to this emo, their friend was listening, they joined, or they wanted to listen to some music to express themselves. What should I do? I cannot say, hey, don't listen to them.
Well, you may want to say that right away.
Yes.
But the long-term objective is to be able to have a conversation about it. Okay? And about what it means, how they heard about it. And every once in a while, you may want to feel like, I'm going to interrogate you. I want to find out who your friends are, what's going on. But it's worth it to keep an open communication about music. Any type of music for kids, it's worth it to keep that open communication about. Or also, if they have a website. One of the things to safeguard is, and I think I have a handout here on internet safety as well. Because usually a lot of these type of insular things kids are doing based on the website. Another thing that can happen to some of these kids, especially if they come into a group is bullying. I know that's another topic some folk wanted to touch on as well. And I see a question from one of my students, but bullying can occur online, but it's usually some combination thereof, where a kid finds some sense of meaning because they were pushed out of a group, and they find a sense of meaning within that group. That's one of the things to consider if you hear your kid is listening to some pretty dark music. And there's all kinds out there. It's not just emo music. It could be a dark set of rap music that has to do with killing and pain and death and other things. Or it could be just a completely different, sounds nice and happy, but the lyrics are really dark. So it's worth it to talk with them about it and see if they're feeling a sense of being in the out group. Yes.
I was just going to say really
It's worth it to have the conversation. Right. So you know some of the groups. He didn't answer it. I'm giving my student a hard time. I would say, you know, from the age from about 4th to 6th grade, I mean, bullying can occur at any age in school, but really from about 4th through 6th grade is when kids kind of develop their own sense of what's going on. So they may, whatever the word of the week is, they'll start calling that kid in a way to tease them. So that's when the teasing becomes really mean, where a kid would be like, okay, I've been here kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. They started it in 4th grade really bad, and I can't seem to get away from these other kids now. They're really, really teasing me with this. Whether it's some derogatory words about gender, whether it's some derogatory words about the race, it's this in-group, out-group piece where let's start saying that. So the plan is to, I was talking about self-worth before, have a child be able to have a script for what they say about who they are and how they're important to the family and their meaning within the family. One of the things I used to have to do with kids, I do anger management groups. And usually these were kids who were kicked out in another way, in that they were asked to leave school on a more formal basis. So they were in alternative education, but they really felt like nobody wants me. So if someone says something to me, I have to fight, because that's the only way I could get some level of respect. So what we would have to plan to do is say, you have to have a different narrative in your head. Because if the only narrative is punch the person in the face if they call you a bad name, that's why you're here. Your choices are limited right now for the kids who I had in alternative ed. I'm talking elementary all the way through high school kids who I was working with. So we would plan out a script for how to deal with some of those things. Same way if a kid, they're not actively seeking to be involved with people who are engaged in harassment, they need to have some type of script that promotes their self-worth. Some people call them affirmations or whatever, but they can be a real clear thing about, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, and if they're participating in meaningful activities, that helps quite a bit as well. Well, yeah, I used to think my father had no idea what he was talking about until I was 27. That's when my daughter turned 1. I said, man, that guy actually knows some things. But having that conversation with them about any of their choices as well that they're making, or one of the other good ones is the choices that their friends make. And I generally don't like to put down, and that's not productive to put down their friends, but a productive conversation maybe about the choices that their friends made